In this video, I'm going to talk you through how you can use n8n and AI automations to automatically match information from your emails to information in a database wherever you're hosting it. I'll be going through and attaching invoices and receipts from Gmail to transaction records that exist in my database using n8n and AI in a really easy way that you can follow along with. Before I jump into it, if you're not familiar with who I am, my name's Adam, I'm 23, I'm based in Sydney, Australia, and I'm a genuine no-code and AI enthusiast. I started freelancing in 2021, and since then I've completed over 50 jobs and earned myself top-rated status on the world's largest global freelancing marketplace, Upwork. Since then, I've created a global no-code agency that's delivered over 60 products for clients all across the world, and I'm constantly involved on the front lines of AI and low-code automation. Before I jump into the automation and start going through it in detail, I want to quickly explain the situation that any founders or anyone really operating a business would probably have that this automation is going to solve. Imagine yourself as a founder at a startup or even at a small to medium enterprise, or on the grand scale, one of the largest companies in the world. You probably make hundreds, thousands of payments per day. And for each of those payments, you'd ideally want to attach a receipt to those payments or possibly an invoice so that, when tax time comes around or for whatever purpose, maybe you want to just confirm that certain transactions have been made or paid. You can actually go through a database, view each of those transactions, and then open the attached invoices or receipts that correspond with those transactions. Now, typically the way this process works, for example, is you might go down to your local tech shop, you might purchase, let's say, for example, a new camera, and often what happens is they follow up with an email that has the receipt attached for your purchase. And when tax time comes around, you genuinely want to have that receipt available so that if anyone was to investigate your purchases, they can actually see the attached receipt and just confirm that that purchase really did happen. So what we're going to be doing in this video is setting up some sort of trigger from your Gmail account or some sort of email account to search all of the inbound emails, check if there's any attachments, scrape those attachments and see if any of that information is related to a transaction that exists in your database. And if it does, we're going to get that attachment and we're going to upload it into our database and attach it to the relevant transaction so you can view all of it in a dashboard of your choice. Now, first off, we're going to be using a tool called n8n. If you haven't heard of n8n, you may have heard of tools like Make.com or Zapier, and they all do similar things. Essentially, it's used for building automations or workflows that you can use to really trigger all sorts of back-end events. In this scenario, we're going to use it to create a little automation to search emails, process some data, and then take some sort of action. There's heaps of tutorials out there on how you can set up your own n8n instance, so I'm not going to focus on that in this video, but if you have got n8n set up, what I'm going to do now is jump into the editor and show you exactly how it works. So if we take a look at this instance to start off with, we can see it has a fairly large and complicated flow. And I'm going to break it down step by step. The first thing we have here is a Gmail trigger. You'll see that it triggers every single time an email is received. Now, you could set this up for Outlook or whichever service that you use to get your emails from. But you'll see basically we have poll times. So essentially this is just going to, in my case, just poll every day. I don't need it to check instantly, and I actually don't want it to check instantly because the sync that I have on our database that stores all our transactions isn't completely instant. So I don't want this to trigger straight away. I want it to trigger ideally a little bit afterwards so that the transactions have had time to sync into my database where they can then be linked. Now, one thing you'll really want to make note you're doing here is you're downloading attachments. So if you don't add this option, you're not going to get the attachments from your email, and then you're not going to be able to use them in the subsequent steps in this workflow. Next up, we have a basic if statement, and all this if statement does essentially is check whether or not an attachment exists on the email. If it doesn't exist, we don't worry about it because the whole purpose of this workflow is to attach the attachment to a record in the database. So if no, we do nothing, and if yes, we process this code event, which is essentially splits the attachments into separate items. So if I expand this, you'll see here that basically what this little script does is it converts a number of attachments to the email into separate attachments. So it's a way to split. Let's say you have 3 or 4 PDFs attached to your email. This will split them up into separate attachments, which you can then use in the subsequent steps. All of the code that's used in these steps, I'll make completely available in my free school community for no-code and AI automation builders. So if you're someone that's interested in freelancing, agency management, no-code or AI, you're probably going to find a lot of really useful materials in that workspace, including including this one. So if you want to join that, the link's going to be in the description. Now from here, you'll see we take 2 paths, and I'm quickly going to explain what each of these paths do. So the first path up the top here is what extracts the information from the PDF, which we can see in this step, and then it comes through these agents. So the first PDF agent here, if we expand it, the instructions on this PDF agent are to basically check the transaction or the text, that we scrape from the PDF and process it into the following JSON structure. All we care about really in this PDF is the amount, the currency, the description, the merchant, and the type being receipt, invoice, or something similar. So that's the purpose of this first AI agent. Now from there, we make a request. Now this is a request to our database where all of our transactions are stored. And our transactions typically hold similar data in terms of amount, currency, merchant, posted date, all that kind of information that's going to be similar across wherever you host your transactions. And then we send it to a third AI agent, which essentially compares the two. So you'll see what happens here is we tell it extract specific transaction information from the PDF text, compare it against a list of transactions to identify a match. Now that's what that's doing. And if a match is received, we're going to output the following formatted data. So you'll see here we use a structured output parser. And essentially what we want is this output. So the amount, currency, description, merchant, a match found, which is a Boolean, and then the unique ID of the match in our database. So we can use that ID to find that transaction when we go to upload the PDF document. Now, quick note, with the API request that we make to our transactions, I've got it set up so I only pull the last 10 transactions. And the reason for that is because I'm not making that many transactions out of this account currently. So the last 10 has a really good chance to be pulling the information. And it also means that the information that I'm sending to the AI agent here is reduced rather than sending 50 transactions if we don't need it. If I start making a lot more transactions out of my account, I'll simply just increase the limit that's received in this API request. So to summarize this process here, we're extracting from the file. So you'll see what this happens here. We're basically extracting the text data, which you can see happens right here. So that's essentially scraping the PDF. We're sending it to an AI agent to summarize it into a really clear JSON structure, which looks exactly like this. This is our string, and I'll make all this code available in our community. We then make an API request to our database to pull the recent list of transactions. We send both of those information to an AI agent, which is going to identify whether or not there is a match in the data. And if so, it's going to output the match and the unique ID of the record so that we can attach the PDF to that record. Now, the second path here is converting the file to a base 64 string, which we can then send via an API request to Bubble, which is where we host our transaction data. So all this is really doing here is we're using the extract from file operator to convert a file into a base 64 string. And we get to this step called merge, which is how we kind of merge the two steps together. So you'll see what happens here is we're basically getting all of the output from this first path and all of the output from this second path, and we're appending them together. So we're creating two separate items. It's essentially just getting two objects and basically merging those together to create two items. And I'll show you what that output looks like. The JSON structure. So this is the output from our AI agent. This is our base 64 string. Now, next up, we're going to aggregate those so it's all in one item and it's easy to use in the subsequent steps. And we make two steps. So one is we upload our file to Bubble. So we're basically just sending that base 64 string to our Bubble database. And then two is we're creating a file record. So no matter where you have your transaction data stored, whether that's with a financial institution, whether that's on some database like Airtable or something like that, or it really doesn't matter where it's accessible, as long as you can access it via API, you can post that data from this scenario straight into your database via API. And that's essentially how our n8n scenario is set up. And what I'm gonna do is take you through an example run so you can see exactly how this works. Now, you'll see here that my last email received is this receipt, and it's actually a test receipt that's basically confirming a deposit for a client that's paid an invoice. Now you can see the key information on this receipt. It's a deposit that's come into our account. So we have a number of key things, but the really thing we're looking at is the amount and the currency, because that's what we're using to link to other transactions in our database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to our n8n scenario and I'm going to test the workflow. So you'll see that the workflow has just run. And what we'll see is that PDF that we we're looking at before. If we refresh our file manager in our database, you'll see at 142 that an application PDF has been uploaded, and we can see the file in our data set. Now it's also posted into our database, so it's now linked to that transaction file. So to summarize how this could actually benefit you, I'm sure you're spending countless hours a week. If you're a small business owner, possibly you're a freelancer even, or that you're a manager in a business somewhere, I'm sure that you've got admin teams that are spending countless hours a week doing menial, boring tasks such as this one, which is something that you could actually pretty simply automate using a tool like n8n to save you hours and make sure that your team's focused on more productive things rather than manually searching through your emails and doing boring things like attaching receipts to transactions. I think this is really just the tip of the iceberg in what's going to be possible with AI agents and automation, which is really exciting. And I think it's something that's really cool to be learning in this phase because it's so new in the market and so many people aren't really familiar or haven't really heard of what's possible with these agents. If this interests you and you want to learn more about NoCode and AI, feel free to subscribe to this channel, or you could join our completely free community where I do weekly Q&As on all things freelancing, agency management, NoCode, and AI. I hope this helps you learn a few things about n8n, maybe tweak your own scenarios, or even set up some sort of system for yourself that helps you better manage your business. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.